Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and we're looking at more interviews coming out of Gamescom. This one coming from Feed4 Gamers, and we've got some interesting topics here, some that we're definitely waiting to find out about, and one thing in particular that definitely caught my eye. I got a question on stream today when we go, was there an interview with that? And someone said, yeah. Like, hey, easy video. So, 14's next chapter, an exclusive talk with Yoshi-P, from the challenges of concluding Dawntrail's story to upcoming expansions, new jobs, and cross-generational gameplay. Yoshi-P shares his thoughts on content design, player feedback, and even FanFest 2026. That was the big thing that got me, was that we actually found out when we should be expecting those FanFest announcements. And I'll tell you right now, sooner than you thought. So, we had a chance to meet with Yoshi-P twice before, first in Las Vegas during FanFest 2023 and later at FanFest in London. This time, however, we got the largest opportunity to sit down with a proper interview packed with insights about the future of 14 from the challenges of... this doesn't even say it was at Gamescom. It's just timed with everything else from Gamescom. So I guess I can't really say it's from Gamescom in particular. But anyway, yeah, interview with Yoshi-P. So how satisfied with with Dawntrail's story conclusion in 7.3 and the reaction players? To be clear, it's talking specifically about 7.3 and how it wrapped up, which I generally liked it, and I'm very curious about going towards the future. The story for Dawntrail was really difficult in terms of developing that story because we were dealing with quite some complicated themes, such as what it is to live and what it is to die. But also in the expansion, there was the introduction of many new characters. So the hurdle that we set for ourselves was quite high for us to conclude the story by this timing. We had to work right until the last minute on making all those adjustments and fine-tuning to make sure that all was concluded. But first, from our perspective in the development team, we think we're satisfied with what we did, and also from a schedule perspective, to think that we made it on time. It's also the one area we felt at ease. I mean, good thing we made it on time. With the ending sequence in 7.3, and by the way, definitely going to be spoilers here for this section, because he's talking about the ending sequences. And the cutscenes we were showcasing, of course, we had our players, who are the hero, take one more step in the spotlight. And our players are all playing different jobs, so we wanted to make sure that we could showcase the uniqueness of their jobs in each of the attack scenes. It's unfortunate it took them till 7.3 to start doing that with any scene, because I always think to the end of Endwalker, that would have been a scene where it would have made sense if we had some sort of sequence that involved our weapon instead of just a slugfest. As much as I loved being a Lalafell Reaper slugging Xenos in the face, it was still a little strange that it took such a drastic turn in what our hero would normally be doing in that case. But I guess he was technically doing the same. But we put a lot of hard work into the theatrics in order to produce a finale that would be fitting for... hold on, sorry, I saw my cat. Do not jump on the table, sausage. Do not do it. Do not even consider it. You know what? Here's what we're doing. Mid-recording, I'm standing up just in case. We're just going to go straight to standing in the middle of this video. I ain't chancing the cat jumping on that. Oh, look at that. Real life modification to the video. Anti-cat measures, as we call these. She can't jump this high. Put a lot of hard work into the theatrics in order to produce a finale that would be fitting for the story that we wanted to tell. So from the perspective, we felt that we had completed what we had set out to do. That was what we thought in the development team. So with regards to player feedback, when I was in Japan before coming over to Germany, I checked the player feedback. I could see that generally there was a good response. Now I've come to Gamescom. This is the third day I've been having interviews, and I've had the chance to meet members of the media. They've been telling me as well what aspects of the feedback they found from the community and which were received very well. Taking their comments into account, I feel like we generally did quite well in this patch. Yeah, it's really about a matter of how you feel about Calyx and, of course, the big finale where, you know, somehow people are surprised there's an Ascian involved. But... yeah, I mean, it really comes down to that. But most people I know enjoyed the fact that we had those more job-specific scenes. And I think they did a really good job. That's something that's way overdue. That's something people have been kind of requesting for a really long time. You know, oh, this person needs healing. I'm a white mage. Well, guess I can't do anything. Better leave it to somebody else and not do anything. So more of that definitely adds to some flavor for the story itself. So I hope we continue to see stuff like that going on. Can we expect a new character similar to Wooklamat to kick off a new story arc in 7.4? You can tell why they're asking that. No. I don't think that no is as matter of fact as I made it sound. But it's funny because I have to read it that way. If I say too much, it's going to be a spoiler, so I won't say that much. But in 7.4, 7.5, we're going to be moving towards the new big story arc. And as we are moving to that, because we are starting that movement, we won't see a new character appear, which would be the basis of that story arc. So basically, no such character would be making an appearance yet. But of course, we had the final scene at the end of 7.3 when the Ascian made an appearance, and also there was a reference to the Winterers. So from 7.4, there will be an introduction of new elements to see what is the context behind that. Will not be a lot of new things being introduced, but I do hope players will look forward to it. Yeah, so I guess we're going to be really hard focusing on finding this out. This won't be something that's teased now, and I guess we find out about it years and years and years later. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, we learned about the Warriors of Darkness in 3.4, and that came full circle in a really satisfying way. I hope they don't shy away from that idea, because they've shown they can do it before, and I think it could work again. They don't have to. I mean, there's no formula to follow for this one, but just saying, I feel like they did a pretty good job with that. They don't feel like they need to rush to explaining everything. You know what I mean? I know you don't want to spoil things, but do you see potential including other Tyrell characters in the next plot development? Yes, if I answer that, it'll be a spoiler. So he's not saying yes, they will be. If I answer that, it'll be a spoiler. But of course, what I can say is that the adventure in Tyrell has now come to an end, and the tension of that story will change drastically. In other words, we're going to be stepping away from Tyrell for the time being. It won't be a surprise when elements of Tyrell's story come back later. I mean, that was how Endwalker worked. I think it's fair to say we will probably see characters like Zero, characters like Wuklamot, characters like Klona, and all these other ones. They'll almost certainly appear later when things are really starting to heat up. But for right now, yeah, it seems like we're just going to be stepping away from Tyrell for the most part. Being more than a year after Dawntrail launch, would you do some things differently, like distribution of content, dungeons, or raids? So distribution of content is actually a great question. I have actually been heavily criticizing the way that distribution of content has worked. And it's not that it's even much different from before. It's that I just don't think, especially after how Endwalker went, that it was satisfactory. And it just made the launch of Dawntrail feel a lot more stagnant than the other expansions that have followed the exact same pattern. It's been so long that it's worked that way. Calling for some of the FanFest content to come earlier, some of the group content to come earlier. Chaotic wasn't the right patch for that. We really should have had a cult in that patch or something different like Cosmic. Beastmaster being teased but not coming until 2 years later. That kind of stuff, the patch cadence, as I've called it a lot, I think does need some work. Rather than the distribution of content, we are working on creating big changes to the content hierarchy in the game. Starting with 7.35, we'll be introducing a new deep dungeon, which is called Pilgrim's Traverse. And with this, yeah, we've heard this explanation a million times. Drastically changing the approach to deep dungeons. So this new deep dungeon will be one for which both hardcore players and casual players can enjoy, and this represents a change in our approach to content design. So this is something that we will be working more on as we move forward. So this is starting with Pilgrim's Traverse in 7.35, but 7.4 in the new variant series, we are also working on changing content design so that more and more players will be able to enjoy the content. In other words, we want all players to enjoy the content we provide. We will be making various changes. Yes, still a risky move. Obviously, I'm concerned about that because, sometimes, what they say, something for everyone is sometimes something for no one. In this case, content for everyone could end up being content for no one. It's really hard to tell because it's all on the execution. That's why, as I've been saying, it's not a guaranteed slam dunk that they're doing this quantum thing. It's going to be subject to criticisms and feedback like everything else is. And with variant, they're not going to have a whole lot of time to take whatever we say about quantum and incorporate it there. So whatever they've started working on there could be a little bit shaky on that same grounds if quantum doesn't turn out the way that they want it to, or the way they were kind of hoping it does. And as they continue to do that going forward, it's just a matter of implementation. There may even be some times where they do it better or worse, and they have to, kind of take those things into account. We'll see. It's definitely something everyone's going to have their eye on when October rolls around. You already dropped some hints on this, but could you tell me a bit more about what's coming in 0.4 and 0.5 regarding content, gameplay changes, and stuff like that? Even story-wise. This person's bold to just straight up ask for story content. In terms of one of the 3 elements we have planned for the 7.x series that haven't shared much about with new players, there is the new limited job, which is Beastmaster. Quite a big content we are going to be implementing in the game. It is both a new job, but we are also producing new content for it, and there will be dedicated content for it. So, when Blue Mage came out, I was one of the people who was more optimistic, because I thought it was kind of cool to be able to group up with other Blue Mages and tackle content. And they had this carnival, which, every week would rotate through some challenges. It was a way to get free teleports. It had like specific achievements and like ways to tackle fights depending on what you got. And I actually think to this day that the Mass Carnival was pretty cool. But it was also incredibly limited in the amount you could do as a solo job. And Blue Mage was kind of presented as something that it wasn't presented as this is a job where you do high-end raids as 8 blue mages, and that's kind of the key thing. So as patch after patch has come out with blue mage updates, it's gotten further and further because there hasn't really been much in the way of Masked Carnival editions actually being made to it. So for Beastmaster, whatever their dedicated content is for it, I want it to be something that isn't just 8 Beastmasters getting together and doing the raids. Whatever they're doing that's a Masked Carnival equivalent, I want to be something that they actually support and update whenever they do Beastmaster with more than 1 or 2 new missions. It needs to be extensive, whatever they're actually going to be doing to it. So I'm really curious to see how this turns out. I'm really surprised they're doing a second limited job. As much as I like the initial implementation of Blue Mage, it was surprising to me when they announced Beastmaster. We'll just have to see how it turns out. I'm personally hoping for a Pokemon job. I'll just play Pokemon in 14. I don't care. Just do whatever Pal World did. Just don't do those few things and just move on. And just let me go catch things and fight like NPCs and all that stuff, and then give me an Elite Four style like arena mode or something. I don't know, with NPCs that show up as in the tournaments, and put some interesting rewards. Just give me pet battles. It's really all I want. Because of this, we are investing a lot of resources and costs into producing this content. We will just barely make it. I don't believe that. I have a feeling there's no doubt they're going to make it for 7.5x, but But we are expecting to release this in the 7.5 series, so I do hope players will look forward to it. In terms of the story for patches 7.4 and 7.5, we covered a bit in this discussion, once again sliding off in order to build up the next peak. Yeah, I mean, you just had this discussion. It's weird that they then followed it up by kind of saying, hey, what about story stuff? It's like, you just asked about that. 7.4 progression of the story will not be so fast, but you will see a lot of faster acceleration in 7.5. As for 7.5, the plot's already been finished, and we have started the voice recording for the voice acting, and it will be different to Dawntrail. So I do hope that players will look forward to it. Rather than there being a focus on Terral itself, there will be more exploration about the 9th reflection. Well, that makes sense, because this whole Winterer thing clearly kind of, I'm not going to say begins, but our first introduction to it is through stuff happening on the 9th. But he says, now I come to think about it, I've said too much, so I'll just keep it at that. Yeah, there's no surprise there, but understanding the 9th reflection kind of will go a long way, I feel like, towards either getting to other reflections or figuring out who the Winterers are in the first place. So, logical, but, like you said, maybe he said a little too much. How do you see the reaction of the fan base towards Final Fantasy XI and the Vana'diel's integration into the current raid series? Of course, 11 is a game with a long history, and it's our senpai of sorts, so it is a more senior game than us with more history. The game is still very steadily continuing its service today, and so it does have a lot of players. A lot of the 11 players are now playing 14, and some of the feedback we found from them is that they felt really sentimental when they're playing the content. They also commented how certain areas were recreated so well. So we received a very good response from them. In terms of those who are Final Fantasy XIV players but haven't played 11, they are learning various things from 11 players. There's also leading to the enjoyment of the content. I think this is one of the great things about having a crossover, and so in this regard, we've had a really good response. Yeah, I think most people have had a pretty good response. I've seen some people feel less attached to some stuff from the second raid series. I've thought about it long and hard, and other than Kieran kind of just focusing on kind of the wrong things, I think the summoning of the gods was far more important of a thing to focus on, as opposed to the earth magic, which are really the two things he's most notoriously known for. But they had to take a lot of liberties to even make the earth magic a mechanic with the giant claws. They picked a lot of really logical things if they're going from mostly the early days of the game. There's just a lot of like bosses that are just random enemies and aren't really like, not that they're not notable, but would they make a good raid boss? No. Chains of Promethea has a few left, and I do think I have a good idea of the bosses that we'll see in the finale, especially the final boss, who I'm 98% certain I know who it'll be. 2% chance for it being Altana, who is the goddess, the Hydaelyn equivalent of 11. I'm leaving a 2% chance in there for them to throw that in there. But there's really only one other option as far as I'm concerned. So I think I know where they'll go with that. But the response has been generally good. I've really enjoyed it. Even from just a 24-man perspective, knowing what I'm going into and what I'm getting out of it. Really enjoyed it. So I'm glad that that's been their general feedback on it as a whole. Some games have recently dropped Ps4 support altogether. Good question. Can we expect Final Fantasy XIV to still support 14 for the next expansion? That's a good thing to know ahead of time. My basic stance is that I do want to continue supporting the hardware, which has grown old, but I do have one concern, and that's regarding the OS of the PlayStation 4, and this is in regards to hardware regulations that were made by Sony. These regulations are related to the limit of data, and because there's that limit of the data, well, we are continually incorporating updates for 14, and we are now approaching that limit. And so for this limit that's in place, we have been asking Sony Interactive Entertainment from our side to increase that just for Final Fantasy 14, and they have kindly been doing that so far, but they told us now that they are also reaching their limits. So I will repeat myself. I do want to provide support for platforms as long as possible. However, there will eventually come a time when the hardware is at its limits in terms of technology. And at that point in time, we would have to provide an end of the service to that hardware. But I will be sure to provide clear reasoning for that decision. Okay, so here's the thing. They asked to say, hey, will you support it 8.0 through 8.5? And he didn't say yes. All of those words did not result in a yes. They also didn't result in a no, but they didn't result in a yes. So it's making me wonder if FanFest is going to be the announcement of the PlayStation 4 end of service. It's interesting because the limit is apparently not in the technology from a we can actually make this game work on the PS4 standpoint. It's from the actual amount of data that the operating system can manage. And I didn't think that Sony was manually doing things in the background to allow Final Fantasy 14 to continue to exist on the PS4. But where those limits are is a big question, because if you're going to support the console, you have to be able to support it for the entirety of an expansion, not halfway in between, just go, well, guess that's not going to work anymore. True story, this happened with Final Fantasy XI, where during Seekers of Adulin, the max size for the hard drive on the PlayStation 2, the game hit that file size limit, and they actually had to do patches in order to bring the file size total down so that people could actually finish the expansion before the end of service in 2016 when they finally stopped the PS2 version. So it's sort of like that, but more less inhibited on storage and more inhibited on their actual hardware regulations. The regulations themselves are not the actual limit of the hardware. So it's pretty interesting. But I would say this. Reading this statement, you have, in my opinion, two options. I am almost certain we will see a Switch 2 version unless Nintendo has similar regulation problems and will then not allow it. But they said talks have been positive. The other option is to get a PS5, which just jumped up like, what, $50 in terms of total cost. So one of these options is a little more affordable, but I would start considering this ahead of time. 8.0 is very likely going to be towards the end of 2026. Potentially early 2027. Until we get the announcement, don't say for certain, but be ready just in case if you're a PS4 player and you do plan to keep playing after that. I would start thinking about that sooner rather than later. Maybe another one on the platforms. An Xbox version is still quite recent. How's the feedback been on Xbox? Maybe looking at the data players, do you see any changes? Are there any patterns that are probably different? That they are interacting with the game in different ways, playing in different ways and stuff. We have been increasing platforms in the past, and we have been asked this question a lot before. For example, whether there's any difference between PC players and PS4 players. I don't think there's any difference. In terms of the feedback we received, players generally said things like they want the patch to be released really quickly, or they want a lot of content to play. And so it's very much along the lines of general feedback. And so I think we're just now at a point where the community where we don't really think much about platform. Yeah, it's kind of I didn't really expect much to come from that question or that answer. There already talks about the next generation of consoles, whether it be Xbox or PS6. You see 14 as it is already a cross-generational game, but going even further into the future. There's always the possibility of providing our games on those platforms because my aim is to provide 14 to as many players as possible. So if there is an increase in platforms, we would work on providing the game on those platforms. Specifically with regards to recent platforms, they are quite high spec, so it's easy for us to work with them compared to back in the days. So I don't think any addition of hardware is negative in that regard. But when I look at things from a gamer's perspective, I feel there's no real need to make new hardware, because I think right now people are happy with the Xbox Series X, the PS5, or the Switch 2. And honestly, from a gamer's perspective, hardware is just expensive to buy. Yeah, I mean, it's like, if we have to keep going up, we will. But, like, right now, it's pretty good. So, I'm not really thinking about it too much is what I get from that. Can we expect a new Final Fantasy FanFest series in 2026? When and where? And am I invited? We are planning for Fan Festival for 2026 and continuing with preparations. And I'll answer your last question now because we've had such an awesome interview. Pretty sure the team will be asking you to join us for FanFest. As for where and when the FanFest will be taking place, it would be great if you could wait another few days. That's it. Just a few more days. So we're going to have FanFest details this week in theory, unless a few days for him is like a month. That could technically be a few days. You know, it's more than a couple at the very least. People are always like, a few is anywhere from like 3 to 7. Some people are like, 9 is a few. I don't mean he's got a really weird definition of a few, but you know, we should be getting some news soon. Especially with the anniversary of A Realm Reborn just around the corner. Yeah, as of the recording of this video, we are 2 days from the anniversary of Final Fantasy XIV. It's a good day to announce it. So I'm going to guess Wednesday of this. You know what? It might be Tuesday at JP midnight even, or, you know, it'll be the anniversary for 14 overseas before the anniversary hits over here. So they may choose to just do it on the JP anniversary, but they might just wait till the global anniversary has happened at that point. Especially with the anniversary of A Realm Reborn just around the corner. What I can say is that for FanFest 2026, we will not be doing it in Las Vegas in August. It sounds like they never, ever want to do that again. And you know what? I think everyone in attendance can agree, A, that they don't want it to be in Las Vegas, and B, that they don't want it to be anywhere hot in the middle of August. Las Vegas, not a great place to hold conventions right now. Not great since, you know, opening back up to everyone. I don't like going there, and I used to love going there. I hate it now. Whether it's in August, I don't want to go if it's in December even. I just don't want to go to Las Vegas. Ugh, this hasn't been a good time the last several times. And it looks like that is the actual end of the interview. So yeah, some of it's just insight into things we already knew. A few questions that, you know, we probably expected wouldn't yield anything. And then, of course, the announcement that we're going to be finding out details about FanFest this week. So I'll be sure to share those when they actually come out. But unlike last time, I am planning on attending this coming Fan Festival. I skipped the last one because I didn't get a ticket because they didn't do media allocations, or they didn't do it in the same way at the very least for North America. Or they didn't do creator allocations. And then I didn't win a ticket, so I just said, whatever, I guess I just won't go, and I covered it from home. I am planning on going, unless, of course, something similar happens, in which case, you know what? Everyone else I know managed to get a ticket. They just went through and asked their communities. I'll probably end up doing the same thing if it comes to that, but hopefully they do a creator allocation or wrap us in with a media allocation this time so we can bring you guys our perspective and our news and our questions that I'm sure will be very, very direct for the next FanFest. I think more than ever, you're gonna want to see creators get in and ask questions and get answers to things that are burning questions at the moment, and we'll probably still be burning questions then. So that's gonna be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for FanFest news and just generally anything Final Fantasy XIV. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, take care.